Very good.
It's live. Hey kids, welcome back. Hope you're having a great day. The past few days you've been learning about different types of fractions. We learned about mixed numbers, improper fractions, regular fractions. So today we're going to learn how to decompose fractions. Decomposing fractions is going to be the lesson today. The word decompose means to take something and break it down. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind. The word decompose is just taking something and breaking it into smaller pieces. So if we're decomposing fractions, all that is we are going to find different ways that we can break our fractions into smaller pieces. We're going to break it into unit fractions. So today we're going to start with this model right here. All right, and I'm going to shade in some pieces in my model. Give me just 1 second. This one don't work. I don't think y'all will be able to see that color. Bear with me, please. Yeah, I don't know if y'all can see that. Alright, well, we'll see. So I'm going to shade this model in to represent a fraction. Shade this model in to represent a fraction. Nothing too crazy. Alright, so I need to figure out what my model represents. I see right here my whole model has 4 pieces. So if I'm trying to represent him, I know because my fraction's broken into 4 pieces that my denominator, so the number on the bottom, will be 4. The number on the bottom is going to be the number 4. I made it real small for some reason. If I'm looking back at the number on top, so the numerator, the number of pieces that should be shaded in, I've got 1, 2, 3 pieces shaded in. So today when we're doing our decomposing fractions, I'm going to take this one model right here and I'm going to break it down into the smallest pieces that I can today. Before I can do that, I need to figure out what each one of my pieces is worth. For that, we're going to use unit fractions. So we take the number 1 and we put it over the number of pieces the denominator is broken into. So I'm going to make a note of that on the side. A unit fraction is any fraction with the number 1 on top. It could be 1/10, 1/4, 1/16. It represents one small piece of your model. It's a representation of how much one single piece of your model is worth. So right here, since it's broken into 4 pieces, my unit fractions for here will all be 1/4. Each one of my pieces is worth 1/4. Alright, to make 3/4. So now what I'm going to do, now that I've figured out all the pieces of my fraction model, I'm going to now take it and break it apart. I'm going to break apart each individual piece. So I'm going to break it down here. Boom. 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 I'm going to take these pieces, pull them down here. Remember, I'm not an artist, but I shall try my best. Alright, so I have 3 pieces right here because up here I had 3 pieces shaded in. So now I'm going to color them in to represent the shaded parts of my model. Alright. I know that each one of those pieces I already found out is worth 1/4. So my unit fraction for that model is 1/4. So I'm going to go in there and label my pieces 1/4, 1/4, 1/4. So all I did here was I decomposed my fraction model into these small pieces. Now that I've done that, I have to use these small pieces to now write an equation. I have to use it to write an equation. And all you're doing is you're figuring out, okay, what pieces you had to put together to make your fraction model. If I'm putting something together, that tells me I'm going to get bigger and I'm either going to add or multiply. Well, we don't multiply fractions in 4th grade, but you do in 5th grade, but we only got one model. We're not working with multiple models here. So, you know, that's why today we're just going to add. That's it. So I literally already set up my equation. I don't even have to think. To make this model here, all I did was take 1/4, and then I added another 1/4, and then I added one more 1/4, and I put them all together, and that gave me a model of 3/4. That's your answer. That's you decomposing a fraction. That's it. You're taking a model, breaking it apart, and using the individual pieces to write an equation. Now you can break apart a model in more than one way, but for today we're just going to break them down into unit fractions, so single pieces. Break it apart, use it to write an equation. Took all these pieces and I put them together to get to 3/4. Alright. So now we're going to switch to this model over here. This time I guess I'll try to use some red. Alright. So let's start by figuring out what each one of my individual pieces are worth. Actually, before that, we need to go ahead and shade it. I'm going to just shade in the model in however I want. Alright, so I'm going to start by figuring out what this model represents. First, I got to figure out my denominator, so I'm going to take the denominator by counting how many pieces my model is broken up into. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total pieces in my model, so I ran out of room on the side, sorry guys. I know my denominator is going to be 7 because I have 7 pieces right here. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 7 of those pieces shaded in. So this model here represents the fraction 5/7. 5 out of 7 pieces shaded in. If my model is broken into 7 pieces, that means each one of my individual pieces is worth 1/7. This is 1 out of 7 pieces, 1 out of 7 pieces, 1 out of 7, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7 of my model. Okay, so each one of my individual pieces is worth 1/7. Now that I got them labeled, again, we're just taking this model and breaking it apart by the tiny, tiny pieces. So here I've got how many different pieces I'm breaking it apart. 5. I'm taking my time with this because it's too easy to make mistakes. It's too easy to make mistakes in these situations. Color them in, color. The reason why I'm making sure to color this in is to remind myself that I'm only working with my shaded in pieces. That's it. I'm not working with the whole model, only the pieces that are shaded in. Each one of these pieces is worth 1/7. I already found that out. Okay, now I use the tiny little pieces to write an equation. So I am going to write an equation to get 5/7. I took all of these and put them together to create this model. I'm putting them together, so that means I needed to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this gave me 5/7 sevenths. Sorry guys, the anchor chart is not very fancy today. But that's all you're doing. You're just taking these models, breaking them apart. There's different ways to break, fractions down into different parts. But for today, we're just learning how to do it by unit fraction. Unit fractions just represent one piece of an entire fraction model, and that's why there's always going to be a 1 on top. Okay, bye-bye. See you next time. Hey, Chris. Chris.